never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and we have a special guest, a friend of the show, a returnee, coming back on, an expert in the field of psychology. Her name is Dr. Jamie Vana. How's it going, doctor? Welcome back to the show. There's a little bit of a frozen delay there. There you go. There you go. I can hear you now.
There was. Sorry. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me again, Daniel.
Yes, ma'am. 100%. Last time you were here, we got a lot of positive, conversation in the live chat and also in the comment section. Everybody was very pleased with your expertise, so I'm glad you could make it back. Before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of today's content, we do have some new documents that I do wanted to kind of go over really fast, if you don't mind. Let's see. And I'd like to get your opinion. You haven't seen or heard of these new documents, correct?
I have not.
Okay. All righty. So the first one, that's really nothing. That's the motion to seal the exhibit for affidavit of objection for the text messages. Now here's a good one here. This one is the defense's motion in limine. This is for vague and undisclosed expert testimony. Now, Bryan Kohberger hereby files a company affidavit of Cy Ray. Are you familiar with who Cy Ray is, doctor?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, as much as everybody else is through the court documents.
Okay, so for those that don't know, Cy Ray is a GPS guy or data ping guy when it comes to your phones for locations. And so he's been working with the defense to try to establish a partial corroboration when it comes to Bryan Kohberger's alibi, which is basically that the prosecution is basically saying that at 2:47 or initially at 2:47 a.m. that the phone turned off, and Cy Ray is saying no, that's not the case, that the phone didn't turn off until 2:54. It's a difference of about about 7 minutes. And I guess his theory is that he was traveling southbound out of, I guess, Pullman, not eastbound towards Moscow. And at 3:02, there's a cannabis shop, Floyd Cannabis, that is off of SR 270, which is the highway that runs between Pullman and Moscow. There is an image of a white sedan that is driving at 3:02 a.m. Now, Cyray is claiming that it is, I guess, impossible for him to have traversed about 6.5 miles in 7 minutes. I don't think that's an impossibility. I think that's fairly plausible. I mean, that's just a little bit less than 60 miles an hour on a highway. What are your thoughts, first and foremost, there? Do you think it's a little bit of a stretch that they're going to try to say that, yes, his phone turned off and but he was traveling in an opposite direction? What are your thoughts?
I do think it's a stretch. I think that they have to just throw anything they can out there. You know what I mean? But I do think it's a bit of a stretch. And I do think that they're 60 miles an hour. I don't know about everybody else, but I could get there in that amount of time, right? So I think that at this point, Daniel, they have no choice but to try to throw as much out there as they possibly can to try and save him in any way that they can. So I'm not surprised they're doing that. I would that the tree didn't fall for this.
Yeah. No, I agree. Now, there's one other thing that I read in here that was interesting about the case. And let me see. And it is that let me see if I can find it. Hopefully it wasn't on one of the ones that I closed.
I love that you highlight.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like to highlight the important aspects of what I'll be reading. Okay, so Cyray, so he states here that between, I guess, June 2022 or January 2022. I don't know why they go all the way to January, and then all the way to the end of December of 2022. I'm assuming that's after he's left the area. That he apparently, and he being Bryan Kohberger, visits the home. Here it is. SA balance did not include analysis of data, AT&T data regarding 23 time periods in his report that he appears to be suggesting the defendant was at or very near the crime scene. So that's a lot more than what we've heard. You know, I think last time we heard it was just 12. Now it's 23 times that he was either at the crime scene or very close to the crime scene. You know, the PCA says, and now we have to take the PCA with a grain of salt because the PCA was written in a matter of days shortly after Bryan Kohberger's name was brought up as a suspect. So a lot of the investigation happened afterwards. So there could have been more evidence discovered since his arrest. But at the PCA, it stated that he had been there 12 times. They were kind of alluding to stalking. Documents stated that, court hearings, the prosecutor states there was no stalking. I think that they're going to try to paint a picture of surveilling. What do you think?
I think that stalking in this sense is just a matter of semantics. So I think that we are going to see stalking. But what did you call it? Surveilling? I guess that's what they would call it. But again, I think that under the statute or the law, when they both stipulated to that there was no stalking, I think that a lot of like pro-burgers and stuff took that as, look, the prosecution even said there's no stalking, not realizing that they're just talking about how it's written in the law. That doesn't mean that he wasn't surveying them or surveilling them, rather. And I'm wondering now that you just said that, because I didn't know that, could it have been that the 12 times that they thought of before were that maybe he was like close enough where, like, you know, now that they're looking and they were able to broaden it more, I'm wondering if the first 12, like, why do you think there's double now? Just because there's more time? Is that what it is?
It could be.
Information?
It could be. Let me see. I'm going to try to figure this out because a lot of folks are saying that within 100 meters.
Yes, I was going to say, does anybody remember Steve Goncalves saying in the very beginning, he made a comment, and I think this was before the gag order, something along the lines of, he made a comment that made it seem like he was so close that it could have connected to their router.
Right.
Does anybody remember that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He said that. I asked him about that. It sounds like that may have been a mistake based on what he was reading. But then again, I was reading some court documents here recently and it said Wi-Fi logs. And I was like, Wi-Fi logs. So, and it was referencing his phone and his phone number, and they were looking at Wi-Fi loggings. But it sounds like his phone was completely turned off. But it doesn't mean that other times, like these 23 times. Now, if there's 100 meters, this is 110 right there. So Taylor Avenue is about 76 meters. I mean, 100 meters, you're like looking at the Linda Lane camera. So basically what they're saying is he was within a block of this house 23 different times. And the thing is too, like, let's take a look here. Like,
are any of the stores that he says that he liked to go to, or do any of them fall within this 100-meter?
No, this is all apartment complexes and housing. I mean, this is within the 100-meter range. You can, if you're out here and just walking, you know what? Let me get out of this view here. Let me go up to here across the way. I mean, even if you're just walking in the band field and you look over, you can see the victims' houses and stuff like that right there. You can see the victim's house right there.
Wow.
And so you don't necessarily have to be up close and personal to be able to surveil somebody. And this is from well over 100 meters away. This is from this location right here where we're looking at, from the Sigma Chi fraternity house, our off-campus fraternity house. You can see that the victim's house is just right there.
And there's so many things out there, like gadgets or stuff that he could have used, like binocular type gadgets, that he could have been that far away and still got the view that he was looking for.
And the interesting thing is, though, so there was a guy named Enan Harsh. Now, I don't know how much of Enan Harsh's story is accurate. It does seem like some of it may have changed. It does seem like he was maybe gathering for some attention. But there was a situation where he said that he had seen a white Elantra parked back here, and that his apartment is somewhere around this direction. And the reason why it stood out to him was because his ex-girlfriend drove a white Elantra, and he thought it was his ex-girlfriend stalking him.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
I do.
So,
but what are the chances that there would be two Elantras? Because isn't that what the defense is trying to allude to here, is that there was another Elantra somewhere?
Right. So even if there was, I mean, there was 22,000 cars that matched the description of white 4-door passenger cars. Is it possible that there was another white passenger car out there? It could be. I know a lot of people are looking at the potential of the car that is traveling around this gas station at 3:45 as another vehicle that is out there. Okay, it could be. I mean, I don't know let's just say it is a secondary Elantra. That really doesn't make a difference, because what they're looking for is the Elantra that was seen here on the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive, and they have it marked off, passing off here, boom, 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 on every one of these cameras. And it's these cameras here that identify it as a 2015, 2016 Hyundai Elantra. And it is these cameras here that are the specific ones related to this incident. So is it possible that there's another white 4-door car out there at the same time? 100%. I mean, white vehicles are very common. I mean, if you go out to the road today, white, gray, and black are the most common colors. The reason being is because of the economy and things of that nature. To paint your vehicle a different color, even if it's coming from the factory, usually comes with some sort of cost and inflation. And so when it comes to automobile dealers, what they do is when they purchase vehicles, they're going to be purchasing vehicles so that they can be competitive with other vehicles in the market. And they usually typically choose your white, grays, and blacks. And those colors come with usually no up price. Thus, they can negotiate a little bit more when it comes to certain persons who are interested in purchasing a vehicle. Now, when somebody goes out there to spec a vehicle, that's a different story. They're going to go choose the exterior color, the interior color, the whole 9 yards. And so they're ordering that, they're willing to wait and whatnot. So, as a dealership, you would be, okay, we understand that aspect, but everybody else that's just coming in on a Friday afternoon, Saturday weekend, just like, hey, let's go test drive a vehicle. They're going to be doing their shopping online and stuff. So you need to stay competitive. So another white vehicle out there at the same time, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, 3:45, that can be around the time that some people wake up to go on trips. Thanksgiving was around the corner. I know a lot of people were leaving around this time before it got serious as far as the weather goes in that area. So it's quite possible. I mean, I think we do see some people leaving shortly after the murders in the Linda Lane footage. But what it boils down to is this specific cameras here. They captured a vehicle during a specific time, and that vehicle is for 13 minutes unaccounted for while it's in an area that is one way in, one way out. And it is for 13 minutes. And during that time, due to phone activity and downloads and sounds from a camera, that it is determined that is the time that the murders are happening, plus also the certificate of cause of death and from the autopsies and the coroner, etc. All those have pinpointed the time of death there at that same exact moment. And that person leaves a knife sheath with Bryan Kohberger's DNA behind, who happens to also drive a vehicle matching this one. So to me,
the thing that you said that's most the thing that you said that is most important there is that even if there's 3 white cars, the point is, like, I think they keep trying to look at all this other stuff, but the point is you still have to account for the white Elantra that they're his.
Yeah, it's his
so, like
Elantra.
you said, even if there even if there is 3 other ones, who cares? That's not, like, I feel like they're just trying to, like, say, look here, look over there, don't look over here.
Right, exactly. And I still think that vehicle here on this gas station is still him. I mean, it is literally a block away, and it is around the time in which his vehicle was seen in camera in the area. So it's not like it's too far out. Plus, documents from that evening that we have seen that I was just talking about last night indicate that at other gas stations that they took camera footage from, that the time was not accurate. And so I would think that we might see an issue with that as well, that the time just isn't accurate, and it's one of the times that he's looping around, and it can be accounted for once it's accurate. But at the same time, it's like, all right, this vehicle turns down this direction at this time. It's a little bit far out there. It's even further than the ones on the Indian Hills Drive. So, we're not going to account for that one. I mean, he could have driven a number of places. I mean, this is where he is seen at 302. Let me take this off real quick. The blue stuff. So right here, Floyd Cannabis Shop. This is at 302. And then for some reason, I mean, maybe perhaps we just don't know about the other ones, but then the only thing we know is that at 326, he's seen down here. Now, I noticed, I wanted to get your opinion on here, that he was traveling not just here, not just around the victim's residence. He actually was traveling behind here more often than in here. Do you think that he could have had multiple target locations in the vicinity? Like, all right, I'm either going to hit this house, or this house, and he's traveling between all 3 or 2?
I do. So I think what happens is that for him, and again, this is just speculation or my opinion, but I think for him, he was going there that night to do what he had to do. And let's just say for some reason, they all decided last minute to sleep out at somebody else's house, that he had other prospects that he could have, because again, if you think about it, when somebody's out there and they're trying to look for something or look for there's never the perfect victim, if you will, meaning, and again, when I say perfect victim, I'm talking about in the mind of the killer. Forget to say sometimes there's things like Ethan or somebody else that might be there that you didn't account for. So I do think that there could have very well have been other, I mean, think about it. How many beautiful women in that area? And again, I'm going under the assumption that, and I don't know that I'm willing to go as far as saying incel, but I'm going into the assumption that he didn't have girls just flocking all over him type thing. So what made Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana attractive to him, there's so many other women that also fit that category. So I would not be surprised if we were to find out, or I don't know if you remember the one girl, she came home from somewhere in her panties. Somebody so she forgot to take her luggage out and she called the police. Did you see that police cam? And Okay, so what if, like, I don't think that it would be crazy to find out that that was him.
I think that was before he moved to the area, but I do think that
But I think they found that he was running around there. So I think there was a correlation that he was there for something that had, so it was before school started. But we need to look into that. I'll do more research on that. And if anybody knows about that, email me and I'll look into that for the next time if we ever meet again.
so. I have a question. So his defense team is claiming he is OCD. That is coming from his defense. The address, 1122 King Road, correlates with his birthday, 1122, November 22. Somebody who's OCD, do you think that that has something, or do you think that that would be just random, just so happenstance?
Okay, so at first I would say that I'm still not convinced about the whole OCD thing, but that's also because there's also obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is kind of similar, but different in different ways. But I do think that there's something behind the numerology. However, I did look after last time, and I remember we were all, because I couldn't believe that I didn't know that his birthday was 11/22 type thing. I think it's 11/21.
It's 11.
So is it?
It's 11/22, November 22nd.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Then I don't think that there's a coincidence with that at all.
Now, you know what? Let's bring this up, this next document, because I think this was also going to go into what I wanted to ask. Let's see. Declaration, Kohberger.
I can't believe his birthday is 11/22.
Yes. Oh, okay. So here's another guy who he is a forensic scientist with a degree of microbiology, medical technology, and forensic science, with certification in firearms, tool marks, gunshot residue, and laser scanning. Okay, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. In his documents that he had written, he talked about going, I guess there was a May 2020 DeSales University final where there was a scenario that he was investigating. And in there, he talked about doing a 3D model and it being up to scale. And he even put down like 1/4 of an inch to a foot. I mean, very detailed about it. They're objecting to the state's 3D model because it's not to scale. And now they've come in with this guy. I think he's going to present a 3D model to scale. Do you think that the state is doing that on purpose? Making it not to scale to set him off? Because up to this point, the defense seems pretty adamant that they're concerned about his behavior in front of the jury and how he's going to react to things.
I think it would be malpractice if they, well, so what you're saying is, so I know that they went in there so that they could do like VR and stuff. I know that he was, when I looked into it, there's something called like scale, and then there's versus grid. Mm-hmm. And when I was looking, it said that scale is what I think he picked out. I have a really good memory, so I'm going by memory. So if I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But he said in his paper that he was going to go by scale. And if you look at scale, that's like if 3 people were standing next to each other and we all walk forward type thing, you're more likely to miss a piece of evidence than if you did the grid one, which I believe he says that if the scale, if he needed to go further, he would do the grid. That would be when they then go over things twice. So I don't know, did the prosecution, I don't know how much of this that they're really looking to get him psychologically, because again, they're there for the law. So I'm assuming that they just want to make sure that they have a case that they could put him away for. However, I do see what you're saying and how it might look that way, but I think they're just doing their due diligence. But it is weird how a lot of the things that he said in that final you're talking about, I feel like he himself kept in mind if he is the person that did this.
Right. Oh, I do need to correct myself. His birthday is the 21st. His driver's license expires. They do it weird that it expires the 22nd, which out here in Texas, it expires on your birthday. So I guess it's just different where you look at. But it is.
I'm in Pennsylvania. That's why I thought it was the 21st as well, because mine does the same thing. So mine's up on the 29th or 28th, and my birthday is the 27th.
Got you. Y'all's weird stuff, man. I'm telling you, when I go to Pennsylvania, it's not just that. It's the streets are confusing. They're small. They're narrow. I'm telling you.
They really are.
you know, I thought it was something, to be honest with you, because they objected to it. You know, it appears that they have a problem with his behavior. I would want to make him sweat. I'd want to make him squirm. I'd want the jury to look at his behaviors and see, you know, if he has any outbursts. I mean, wouldn't I just think if he were to outburst in the courtroom, that would be crazy. I don't think he'll do it. I think he's a little bit more controlled than that. But I think that they're trying to make him sweat a little bit by making these little things, and it's bothering him to the point where they hired an expert to go in there and do it themselves. It's insane to me.
No, you're right about that. And I do think, though, that when it comes to him and all of this stuff, that I looked into the new, not new, I don't know if she's new, but the person that did his psychological background, and she is a neuropsychologist. So but I found it weird that I can't find if the defense wants her to. She is a right? So she's the one that diagnosed him with the autism, OCD, and the developmental coordination disorder, which you guys, I think I forgot to say last time, just so everybody knows, that developmental coordination disorder is something that happens in childhood. So you usually grow out of it, like before you even get to like your teens type thing. So I don't even know where that came in at. But my thing is, I was very impressed with her resume. But then I in the same breath, in the same document I was reading, it said that they didn't know if they were going to call her up. And I'm wondering if it's because wouldn't that, and I'm asking you as somebody that knows the law better than me, wouldn't that then open her up to the prosecution, asking her a ton of questions about couldn't this be personality disorder? And maybe that's why Anne is trying to get that to stay out.
I think that's quite possible. I mean, they've already objected to the fact that they want, and the prosecution wants an independent doctor to evaluate Kohberger, and they've objected to that already. So, you know, I mean, what does that tell you? Yeah. They've already objected to that. What does that tell you?
It tells me that they paid the other girl a lot of money to say that he has autism spectrum. I guess my other thing is, you guys, so there's a ton of people in chat right now, and I guarantee that almost everybody in chat either has somebody in their family or knows somebody with autism. And it is very uncommon for you to get diagnosed with autism. The fact that they're just now diagnosing him with it, is it impossible? No, it happens. But I would think that this is something that would have been diagnosed like in his childhood if he really had autism. So that was another thing that we didn't talk about last time that I thought about afterwards and was like, why didn't I bring that up?
Yeah. You know, to go into today's show, the title of the show is The Many Faces of Bryan Kohberger. And I think that there's quite a bit. I mean, there's so many images of this guy where he looks different. I mean, this is an image of him the night or the morning of the homicides. This is about 6 hours afterwards. As a psychologist or somebody who knows a lot more about the mind, and somebody who might be lack of feelings and things of that nature, this is my opinion, my theory, my thought. I felt like this image here looked very much more, but pretty similar to this image here, or when Patrick Bateman was trying to, take the life of somebody. I mean, there's another one where he's in headphones as well. I read his feeling thing, right? Where he was saying he lacked feeling. He thought himself as an a-hole. He sees people as a sack of meat, doesn't have, all these things. It was very, very similar to the intro of American Psycho, where Patrick Bateman is talking about his lack of feelings. I couldn't help but think that maybe he took inspiration from there.
It's the intro and the outro, Daniel. I will tell everybody here, Daniel, I don't know if it's just me, but Daniel definitely made a connection that I hadn't heard any other content creator before make. So last time I was here, Daniel brought up about American Psycho and asked me if I had ever seen it. And yes, I had seen it, but it had been years. So after the show, I went back and I rewatched it, you guys, and Daniel hit the nail on the head. So what I then did was for tonight's show was I went through and I got, because a lot of the other person that people always are comparing him to is Ted Bundy. So I went through and I did like the psychological traits of Kohberger. I even added Dexter in at one point, Ted Bundy and Bateman, and you were right on. So if one of my very first video on YouTube is called Do They See Me Now? And my thumbnail is all different pictures of Bryan Kohberger throughout the years, and not one of them looks the same. It looks like a bunch of different people. So I agree with that. And then the middle was his eyes, and you see like the Idaho students in the background. And the whole point of the video is that he doesn't have an identity. So he tries to do all these different things in life that usually people get a lot of praise for, things like that. And it's just as if nobody sees him. So Do You See Me Now is that thing that I don't have an identity. And in the very opening and the outro of American Psycho, he literally talks about how he has no emotion, how he doesn't feel like he's, he pretty much talks about it. He doesn't have an identity. And I don't know if you took notice, but I got chills at the very, very end in the final scene. If you look at the door behind him, it says something like something about there's no exit. And when I looked into it, because I always know with these movies like The Shining and stuff that there's always different meanings that, we don't always catch. And here, the whole point of that with the book was that even after everything, so even after he kills and does all these things, he still feels like he confessed and that nothing changed. So again, it's that whole lack of identity. So I think Daniel, he would have gotten like extra credit, an A+. And again, I think it's easy to compare him to Bundy. But the fact that you then compared him to Patrick Bateman, you did a fantastic job there because there are many similarities.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. The first one, I watched it for the first time because I saw the picture, right? I hadn't seen the movie before. So I watched it for the first time and I sat there and I was just like, wow, I think I'm watching a movie that this man watched at some point in his life and really, really idolized. It starts off with him saying that he's 27 years old. Bryan Kohberger, 27 years old at the time of the murders. A lot of people ask, why that night? Why that night? Maybe there's something to, 27 that he was focused on. It talks about, when he pulls his face off, Patrick Bateman in the movie, he has this like wax and his face is super clear. And I couldn't help but realize, like, just kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if we find in his shopping list the exact same soaps that Patrick Bateman was listing out that he was using on his face and body.
That would be weird.
And I mean, his face looks freshly waxed, very similar to Patrick Bateman in the movie. 27 years old. And then, some of the movements too, like for instance, this one, the hands.
Yes,
now, I know a lot of people
yeah.
do that, but this was a huge moment in the movie. He's talking with the detective. The detective is explaining to him about a person who is missing, and that Patrick Bateman knows that he has taken his life and he knows where he's at, and they're on to him. They're on to him in this scene, and he's trying to act normal enough for the detective and also figure out what it is that they know, et cetera, et cetera. And I just couldn't help. I mean, even the suit, I mean, you can't see it, but it's kind of close to it too.
In that same scene, so I don't know if you know this, but psychologically, in the same scene, the detective shows him the CD case. And what he's doing there psychologically is it glares off of the sun. So the sun glares off of that and then hits Bateman in the eye. And I think if you even zoomed in here, you could see it. So they do this on purpose because what they're trying to show is usually that would be enough to make anybody like blink or, look away from. But people with psychopathy don't react the same way because their brains are a little bit different. So I wanted to see if that was really part of it or if I was just being like crazy and looking way too analytically into it. And sure enough, that was part of they did that on purpose. So I thought that was like interesting.
The other thing too, watch, look at how long his thumb looks here. This is obviously several weeks after the homicides, and look how little his thumb looks here compared to
Remember, I
the.
said that? I said his thumb looks so little, and you pointed out it could be because of it swollen. I don't know if you zoom in on that. I see a we were talking about maybe seeing a bruise under his chin. I see one right there, like a hematoma.
Yeah, this looks
Mhm.
here like, which is crazy because this is his left hand too, right? So if he's taking a picture with his right hand and he's left-handed, what do you think the possibility of him being able to use both hands, is that common with psychopaths, sociopaths?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily common with sociopaths, but our handedness occurs inside the womb. So we see even inside, like when you're pregnant, a baby inside the womb has a preference already for either their right hand or their left hand. So we know that handedness is more genetic than what we thought it to be before. Think about all of our parents or Catholic parents who got their hands slapped in school. If they used their left hand, they made them right with the right hand. Of all of that, they weren't trying to be deviant. It's just we have a preference for handedness in the womb. For some people, ambidextrous is when you're able to use both hands, but they even find that even people who are ambidextrous, that they usually still subconsciously go for one hand more so than the other. I would think that in a situation like this, where you don't want to mess up type thing, like there's no room for error, I would think that he would go with the hand that he feels more comfortable with, which in this case would be his left hand.
Yeah. Well, there's supposedly,
But it's a sad thing. Like, I think it's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that?
No, go ahead. There was a little bit of a delay. I apologize.
No. So a lot of folks are saying, is that a Band-Aid on his finger? There's something there. I can't tell if that's a Band-Aid or not. That could be a Band-Aid.
Wait, where? I don't see a Band-Aid.
On his ring finger right there. Whatever this.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Oh. You know what else I noticed, Daniel? Do you remember last time we were talking and I said it looked like he almost was holding something because his fist didn't look like it was completely together? I don't know if you Google it on the side or whatever, but there's a picture. If you look up Ted Bundy with the thumbs up, he's literally doing the exact same thumbs up and his hand is like open like that a little bit, like Bryan Kohberger's is. So I don't know if Kohberger did that on purpose to like emulate Bundy.
Yeah, that is weird because it's not a, I don't know.
That does look like a Band-Aid, you guys. I didn't see that until just now.
Yeah, that looks like a Band-Aid.
Wow. That's interesting, right?
That is. But there is supposedly, I can't remember what article it was that I read, but it had him writing with his left hand. And then there's images and stuff of him writing with his right hand. And so that's why I ask. And then also they have a, what do you call it? I guess they're talking about the dexterity of Bryan Kohberger and unable to commit this crime. I was just wondering if maybe perhaps he used his left hand as well to try to emulate that maybe there was two people or a left-handed suspect. Get what I'm saying?
Now that would make more sense to me than just being ambidextrous and being like, I'm going to use both hands. Now that would make more sense if it was calculated so that somebody could say like, this is a right-handed, perpetrator, then that would be a totally different story to me because that would have to do with being calculated. So in that case, yes, but just out of nowhere, just being like, using both hands, I think you would go with the hand that you feel most dominant with. But can I just say something? I wrote something down and I found it when we were talking. When I wrote down that Bateman, the lead character in American Psycho, isn't just a fictional serial killer. He's a symbol of the hidden predator, someone who wears a flawless mask to survive and thrive in society. He's obsessed with image, order, control, and status. Everything about him is curated, from his skincare routine to his business card. The obsession with perfection, superiority, and control, paired with a total lack of empathy, makes Bateman's fictional character eerily similar to Kohberger's psychological profile. So he embodies traits that I believe are like Bryan, such as narcissistic, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and psychopathy. That's all. I just wanted to make sure I said that because you were saying all of those things and I literally had that written down. So to validate what you were saying, I felt the same way.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah. And You know, I took half a semester of psychology in a junior college once, and that's what I got.
You probably did great. I think you do a good job. Like there's certain things here and there that I would like jump in if I could, if I was watching it, like little things like I don't think people understand that with a personality disorder that people don't get bothered the same way that you or I would.
Mm-hmm.
So doing things like the prosecutor, doing things to get under his skin and stuff like that, I feel like that would be less effective with somebody like a person in this situation, as opposed to maybe somebody who stole a car, or like somebody that was like a 16-year-old just starting to, his crime record. Like I feel like the prosecutor there could get in under their skin, where here I feel like that's almost like, oh, you want to play chess? And again, like I said before, he's the only one playing the game, like where he doesn't realize that everybody else sees through him. Not everybody, but people that need to.
Yeah. And I can hand draw
that same thing. I'm sorry. That same thing happened. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. That same thing happened with Bateman in the movie, right? It was that same thing where other people, like if you remember the one part at the laundromat, and he tells a girl that it's like wine or something, but it's really blood on a blanket. So in the movie, the whole movie, they show that every time he tries to get over on somebody, like you see the other person, like you could tell that they're trying to make a point that the other person believes what he's saying, but he believes what he's saying. And that's so important because that's a part of a personality disorder.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I remember that. Gaslighting was one of the things that he was doing. Like, oh no, that's not exactly what you're seeing isn't what you're seeing. And that's kind of what the defense is trying to do now. What do you think about the fact that his image changes so much? I mean, this is a profile picture, and this is another profile picture. I mean, you would have thought that they were like brothers 5 years separated. I don't understand
Daniel,
this.
if you look at my head, do you see me now thumbnail? It's literally all different pictures of him all the way around, and not one of them look the same. Like, so I think throughout his whole life, there you go. There's another one. That's one of the ones on my thumbnail too. But I mean, and then you go back and there's the one in high school, and then the other one in high school. There you go. Flip them. You're right. He doesn't. And I think that is him trying to find an identity. That one's creepy. But this is him trying to find an identity.
This is 2020 in DeSales, and this is also in DeSales. They don't look like this guy. Looks like the teacher of that guy. That looks like the professor of like 45, and that's his student.
Well, what I do remember is the kid that took this picture said that at this time, Bryan was in there and he was like goofing around and stuff. And the kid said, Bryan, stop laughing. Like, we got to get a serious picture for the project. And he said, just like that, he like turned it off and was serious. I was like, that's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. That is.
Mm-hmm. And that's where he got that picture.
What do you think about
this?
this
One, the one before. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about this? So let's fast forward to some of these images. This is him in court afterwards, obviously. This is him afterwards while he's on the run, heading. This is about a month later. He in this traffic stop, he looks thinner. He looks thinner than here, but he doesn't look this thin. Okay. And so he's already put on some weight by this point, in my opinion. This is a traffic stop before the murders, and he looks heavy. He looks almost like the same as that court picture. And do you think there could be something to the weight loss as far as like the anticipation of something happening? And if that's the case, this was in 2020 in DeSales, and at one point he got down to this. Do you think maybe he's done it before?
So I think this has to do with the disorder of control. So like an eating disorder. So I would think that around the time of the killings, if he is the guy, which I think he is, he was probably dealing with that disorder of control again. And then once he eliminated that, unfortunately, the 4 beautiful victims, it's almost as if, in my opinion, that he could then go back to the way that he was before, and if anything would want to look different than he did, so that just in case somebody did say him, he would look different than that. But again, the bushy eyebrows, who knew that she was going to, that was going to be a thing. But I do think that it has to do with eating disorder and control.
Mm-hmm. I do too. I was just wondering if maybe perhaps there's something to, like, him preparing for something like this happening, whether it be more working out, not eating because he's writing things down or surveilling stuff like that. And I wonder if this has happened before. I
Like, you mean, do you think he committed a crime before?
like, do you think that that could be a side effect to him committing a crime, the weight loss? Like, he gets
Well, I do
so
think
focused
that has to
into
do.
that.
Yeah, so that has something to do with the disorder of control. So I absolutely see a connection between the two. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that he either did it before, planned to do it again, right? And he just happened to get caught, or what the case, there may be. But I do think that it has to do with that whole control thing. And I think that in that picture where he's like this, that's his way of being like, I'm in control. I did this, like, almost as if he felt like he was able to get away with it. I really don't think he thought he was going to get caught. I really don't. I think he really thought, hi, Kelly from Moxie Obsession.
Yes, she's in here. I'm actually going to be on her show on Wednesday night, guys. And so
I can't wait to watch it.
See this image here, like this face here, looks similar to that face. I could say that that's the same guy. That's the only two images. And these are months apart. One's way before the murders, one's way after the murders. This is around the time that he was arrested. He's still fairly thin here.
Look at the lack of affect in all of his pictures, right? Like, even if you get the one where he graduates from his master's program, there's just like, he's blank. So a flat affect would just mean just flat. So like you're unable. Now there he looks happy. And a very weird time to look happy when you're going into court for a quadruple homicide. So of all the pictures, this is when he should have been smiling when he got his master's degree, not at this point. And what does this mean? See, if anything, I think these things are calculated. Who's in the courtroom right now? Who's seeing him smile? Like, I feel like this stuff he's making a conscious choice to do.
Yeah, he's looking at his attorney. His attorney. I think that's the blonde hair that's right here at the bottom right. She's about to stand up, and I think that's who he's smiling at. His zipper is down too. I think this is one of the images where everybody was his defense team were like, "Oh my God, they're pointing at his fly. They're pointing at his fly, and they're making."
I wonder if it was anything to look at. I'm just kidding.
This is an image of him as a younger guy. This is, I guess, in high school. Another image of him. This is when he got moved into Ada County. To me, he looks healthier. The longer he's in jail.
He does, and that's because he doesn't have control of like going out all night or doing those other things that he wants. So, I mean, what other place than jail where you lose all of your rights? So you literally lose control of everything that you did have control of. Did you thing notice when you pull this up in the pictures, you can't tell that his eyes are blue. So like here, they're crystal clear blue, but if you look at a lot of the pictures, I don't know, is that a dilated pupil? Like, what is that? Like some of like the newer ones, like what do people think? Like even the one the day after, the morning after, like you don't see these big blue eyes like you do here.
Yeah, his eyes aren't dilated there. They're pretty dilated there.
Mm-hmm. And then even if you look at some of like that, the creepy look there, that it looks like he has brown eyes. Isn't it weird?
Yeah. Didn't Bundy have this same thing where people would look at pictures of him and say that, man, he looks different in almost every image?
Yes. I think there's a lot of similarities with Bundy, actually. Like down to, them both being into crime and stuff like that. And psychology. They both went for psychology.
American Psycho, Patrick Bateman brings up Bundy and Ed Gein. He being Bryan Kohberger, studied violent crimes under Katherine Ramsland in DeSales, and one of the books that he was to read was Confessions of a Serial Killer or something like that from BTK.
It's a good
Dennis
book.
Rader. I'm wondering, because you remember the Reddit survey that he had, and he had access. I wonder if he had access to really, really violent criminals because of his connection to Katherine Ramsland in DeSales. And I wonder if those were the type of individuals that he was conversing with when it came to his thesis on, what goes through the mind and the emotions of a criminal while committing a crime. And I wonder if he felt
one thing I will
there.
say, I do think, yeah, I think that's the only time that he was able to feel a sense of identity or purpose through these other people. I will say though, game they do say Ed was the one that said the quote was about he said with all friends in the movie Bateman, and he says to them,
You're
"Oh
breaking
yeah,
up.
you know what Gain said about what." Oh, am I
You're
breaking up?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
You're breaking
bad.
up pretty good. It's hard to understand. Like it's almost every word right now. I don't know if you want to try to reset something.
I'll be right.
All right, sounds good. I'll take over while you do that. So she's going to take over that real quick and reset so that way she can get her computer going. I'm going to answer some questions in the live chat. Please put the stars up. We got a couple of new members. I put a link already in the Discord for the members for our Discord link. It's a post for members. We have Barb, who's become a newest member today. Arlene, I'm sorry. I apologize so bad. New member. Lisa as well. Thank you, guys. We have Rebecca coming in with a $20 super sticker. Dorian asking, Danny, do you think he had his eye on different houses? I 100% do think he had his eye on different houses. I do. I think he was surveilling more than one. I think that there's something to him driving around in that neighborhood. I think that he had his eye in that neighborhood. Remember, it was called Greek Row. So there was multiple houses there that had college age persons inside of them. So it wasn't just the victim's house. In fact, the next door neighbor's house was also an off-campus house that housed sorority and fraternity, early sorority females. I'm not sure about the entire housing of everybody that was in there, but I do know that there was some that was, and some that were very close to the victims, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana, also Ethan. Let's see. Sam says, one thing I noticed about American Psycho is that Patrick Bateman never did any work. He worked in mergers and acquisitions, which helps people sell businesses. But all he did was listen to music. That is true. That is true. But a lot of people do bring up an interesting question. Did he actually ever take anybody's life? I think he did. I just don't know how many. I think there was more to him in the movie, just because remember he shows back up and then the house is empty. There's nothing there. I think that remember when he was doing his sit-ups and he was listening or he was watching, I think it was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre was in the background while he was doing his sit-ups. I think he was imagining that happened, to be 110% honest with you. The whole scene with the chainsaw, because if you remember, she runs out and she starts banging on doors and screaming. He's running with a chainsaw in a complex like that. Nobody heard it. He drops it from the top. It lands on her. So I think that maybe perhaps there was a part of hallucinating, maybe some schizophrenia that was happening with Patrick Bateman as well. And I don't know if that's something that maybe Bryan Kohberger also dealt with or not, but the part that I was intrigued about when it came to the movie was the fact of the age, some of the images that Bryan Kohberger took of himself were very eerily similar. Some of the words that Bryan Kohberger has stated as a youngster, as far as lack of feeling and emotion, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it looked like he was very much inspired by the American Psycho movie when he was writing those words. It was eerily odd and similar. But then again, somebody that is suffering from those type of psychoses and psychopath and sociopath probably have those emotions and feelings. And I think that there's probably a few people that would say that they have similar thoughts and feelings. And I think that if you have somebody like Bryan Kohberger who potentially, it's not just having him, that he is in fact that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that psychotic sociopath, and that I think he's could have found a connection there. Maybe perhaps, there's a lot of crazy people that do a lot of crazy things. Remember that Aurora incident that happened during the Batman movie and stuff like that. Inspiration comes from people from all over the place. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying necessarily that it was all from the movie or whatever the case may have been. But what I am saying is that I think he may have watched that movie out sometime, and I think he found a connection there. And I think it's in his writings. I think it's in his in what he says he feels. I mean, it's very similar, very similar. Let's see. The question for Dr. Vaughn. I'll bring that up. Hey, what's going on? Watts the Obsession becomes a newest member. Thank you. Thank you. Mary Beth Kroll as well. Thank you. We have a super chat from Lisa58. Daniel, did you read his crime scene processing essay from 2020? If not, you should. The victim female stabbing, he also wrote in his first person. Very weird. Thanks for hard work keeping us informed. I did read it, and I created a video and I talked about it. And I think that the most important thing that I took out of that is the fact that this guy put together everything that would occur during an investigation. And I think that when you look at how this crime was committed, the lack of evidence is evidence. And that is evidence that somebody that committed this crime had knowledge of how law enforcement would be investigating this crime. And I think that you would have to have thought of a lot of things that would explain why he did certain things. Like, for instance, only touching the door once. And he talks about this. He talks about checking the doorknob for DNA, et cetera, et cetera. So he put a lot of thought into it and thinking that, hey, if I touch this sliding glass door once, or every time I touch the sliding glass door is an opportunity for me to leave my DNA behind. Now, let's just say that he opens it and he closes it, right? No big deal. He hasn't done anything at that point. But once he's committed the crime and he's now trying to leave and potentially leaving at a high rate of speed, maybe perhaps because you don't know who's there. Maybe somebody does wake up and they have something. Maybe perhaps they have some sort of weapon and he needs to evacuate the premises immediately. Well, he doesn't want to have to run and open the door. I mean, he'd rather run out of an open door. But the other thing too is, and as he wrote down on his document, that the more times he touches the door, the more opportunity for DNA to be left behind. And so he leaves the door open so that way he doesn't leave DNA behind. And I think that document there just kind of shows the means aspect of the crime. Because you have the motive, you have the opportunity, and you have the means. The means being, is this person capable of committing the crime in the manner that it was committed? So it's not just the fact that is Bryan Kohberger able to wield a knife and stab somebody. It's also, is he able to, or whoever the intruder was, able to commit this crime and mask their DNA and their path in the manner that he did? Would they have had the knowledge to have committed the crime in the same manner? Et cetera, et cetera. So welcome back. It seems like, I think your internet's working better. It sounds like it is. And so I was just going through some questions here. Yeah, I think we had one here. Virginia asked, last time Dr. Vona was here, did we talk about AT used to touch Bryan frequently, but now her demeanor has changed toward him? Have you noticed that maybe they're not physically contacting him as much?
So I think that if there is something with that, I think him wanting her to do X, Y, or Z, and her, understand like the law. So I think if anything, I have noticed that. And I've noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I get they further apart from each other. So I wonder how much of it just him trying to be like, I could do this better than you, and that you be doing A and B. And she's like, no, you have to do like this, and I want to do that. I have noticed that 100%.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. You are still breaking up a little bit. Yeah, I can still hear the it is breaking up, but you are coming in a little bit clearer. I can at least understand this time. So from what I understood was that you said that you have noticed that there's been a little bit more distancing there behind there, and you think that maybe perhaps it could be Bryan Kohberger thinking that he could do the job better, or maybe asking things of that case. Is that correct? Yeah, and so I think that person, Ann Taylor mentioned that she thinks that he's innocent in judge's courtroom, that he's an innocent man, And then in Judge Hippler's courtroom, she said he's an innocent man right now. Do you think there's something behind her changing the way that she described that?
You really think she's innocent?
I don't. You know, one of the biggest things that I have seen in the court documents is that she doesn't know where he was at that night. Like, for instance, when they have asked for his alibi, she has mentioned that she only knows what she is given, which is that Bryan Kohberger has not stated at any point where he was at any specific time, just that throughout the night, he was southwest of the area. And so that tells me that he has not yet told her exactly where he was at 4 a.m. And I question why would she not know that information? I think that, you know, if I'm not an attorney, but I would assume if I was an attorney and I had a client, I would say something to the effect like, all right, you know, do you want me to know where you were that night? Because there's only certain things that I can do if I know where you were or where you weren't. And, you know, don't tell me anything. Just tell me, do I need to know where you were or not? Or is that something that you should keep to yourself?
So I think that, like, apparently, I heard this just because I have a friend that's pretty higher. He will tell his clients not tell him necessarily, because I guess it's still considered something of the court, like where if you tell him that he was termination, but if you tell the legal type thing, I don't know. There was a way to get around. So I don't know if by law you're supposed to say, you know, you're right. Like, how can you get me off? Like you said, if they said, do you like, you know, is there something? So there are ways to go around it. So, but I think that she even do, because I have to be honest, I think there's, I don't know. I'm breaking up. Am I breaking up, you guys?
Yeah, you're breaking up again, pretty good again. You're actually frozen. I'm not sure. Maybe it's my side. I don't know. Maybe
join from my phone.
All right. Yeah. Let's try that.
Sorry, you guys.
It's all good. All right. Put a couple of stars in the question mark and let's see if we can. That way I can see some of these questions that you guys have. I'm going to start going through them and starring the stars so I can ask them in a minute. Didn't he help some girl with security? There was speculation he monitored through his TV that the fence has. Yeah, that was something that had been reported, that he had allegedly something happened to one of his classmates or students where they felt like there was a break-in or something to that nature. And the report was that that person had asked Bryan Kohberger to install some cameras, or Bryan Kohberger basically had recommended to install some cameras and had recommended that he could install them for her and had access and her Wi-Fi password and was watching her or something of that nature. I don't know how true it is, but that was something that was reported for sure. After the incident, I imagine he was aroused for several days. I'm pretty sure he was. I think that's why his picture looks the way it does. I mean, you got to ask yourself, it's 6 hours afterwards. He had already gone home and then left. It looks like he just got out of the shower. Would have assumed he would have showered when he got home. The first time. Let's just assume that he committed this crime. You would think that he gets home, he's going to shower, wash everything off. And that's at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then it looks like he just took another shower. I mean, you can imagine what he was probably doing to take that shower. Did he ever have a girlfriend? I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't heard about that one. Welcome back.
Hi. Hopefully this one works.
Much better. I can tell you already 100% much better.
Oh, really? Cool. Okay, good. That makes me happier.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Now we can definitely hear you. One thing that I was saying, and this might be kind of disturbing. He gets home at 6 a.m. or about 5:30. I'm assuming he's showering at that time. He leaves. He goes back to the crime scene at 9:30. Now this image is taken at 10, so he probably gets back home around 9:35, 9:40, right? This is about 45 minutes later. It seems like he's taking another shower. I think there's probably a reason why. I think he was aroused, and I think that probably explains the stupid, face he has.
I agree with that.
Take 2 showers that close to each other is probably for a reason.
I definitely agree with that. And I think that I would assume that and again, this is maybe TMI, but I always thought that as soon as he was, after he left there, that was probably after he got himself into a safe place, but that was probably one of the first things that he did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, in that 18-minute time span that he was out missing somewhere. Let's see.
He could have been getting rid of evidence then too when he was missing for those 18 minutes.
Oh yeah, but he was probably celebrating a little bit. This is something that I think that now we see in the court documents. He was near the crime scene 23 times. This is something he had been planning. Movies are BK's inspiration. He dressed and armed like Michael Myers from Halloween. The K-bar knife is a Hollywood weapon. That's something tactical or skill would use. And the sorority houses are targets. That sounds about accurate.
I agree with that. And I would say that if you have a lack of identity, that one of the things that you would do is to watch things like movies to see who you identify as or what you identify with. So he clearly feels an identity in this field. And again, so how would that be different from other people in the field? Because other people are doing it for different reasons. Just like I've admitted before that in the beginning, I think I went down the road of psychology because I was trying to figure myself out and my family out. But then I wound up loving it. So I continued down that road. But it's not abnormal for people to go into psychology or criminology, things like that, because they're trying to figure out things for themselves first that they haven't been able to figure out in any other way. So I wouldn't be surprised.
How important are the song that he's listening to in this picture? What do you think would be the importance of that song, if any?
So that's so funny you asked that, because I was thinking, what could he be listening to right now? And the two things I thought of was either one would be a song from the album. I forget who was the singer again on American Psycho.
Huey Lewis.
Either that or his rap song.
Really? His own song?
Yeah.
You know what? That would make sense. He's that into himself.
And he says, you might be evil, but I'm the devil.
Yeah, that's true. That's what he does say. Watch the Obsession comes in saying, Dr. Vanna, I just watched your last appearance on this show, and I think your analysis was sharp and insightful. Daniel, you were great too. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Daniel's actually a really good psychologist, you guys.
It's because I took half a semester like Sinbad and Jingle All the Way. I put it all there. I can't remember. I think it has to do with emotions and lemon and a bunch of these other things that are going on. I think we might hear from because remember they were going to talk about Cyree, but they said don't bring him. What you have is enough. You don't have to bring, and they keep trying to bring the guy. And the only thing they want to do is just kind of talk about how his life story. I mean, last time he was on the stand, he was up there for about an hour just talking about, when he was 2 years old, he learned how to ride a bike, and then he picked up a phone and, became a cop and a bunch of things. I mean, so many things that was just to say, oh yeah, by the way, we don't think he turned off his phone at 2:47. We think he turned off his phone at 2:54. Like, come on now, dude. I mean, we get it. We understand. But I think that's what that is.
I like this judge better, though. I feel like this judge is more no nonsense. So I think the worst thing that they did for the defense, at least, is have this moved. I think that I wonder if he's angry about that now, because they were, I don't know if anybody else in the chat knows, but are they still honoring his vegan diet because they were in Idaho?
I believe they are.
Okay.
I believe, and they did say that the defense said that his nighttime workouts and runs decreased and his night drives and those things increase. So this weight gain isn't attributed to him not working out, in my opinion. You get what I'm saying? Because he wasn't already working out. He had already stopped that. He had started doing long drives at this point, taking pictures of the stars and doing all these weird things to himself. That was already happening. And
Before the crime,
he had stopped doing they're trying to, I guess what they're going to try to do, I'm assuming that he probably practiced this drive out there in the middle of nowhere a couple of times. And so they're going to try to attest that as some sort of habit for him instead of it being what it was, which was learning the area without a phone.
So I think that a lot of that has to do with his personality as well. So he's very rigid, and it would fit his personality that he would repeat this in his mind, so fantasize about it and then try to put it into action. So I wouldn't be surprised. I know that the neighbor said that she always heard him running around or doing the vacuum or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if he was like doing full run-throughs of the whole thing just to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Do
I
you
do
think
too.
he
I mean,
practiced?
23 times. You know what I would be interested in knowing is if his phone ever turned off for his period of time before this at night. Because I think that if we see that his phone turned off for a few hours on another night, that tells me that he attempted to try this on multiple occasions. Because I don't think he'd be going into the house or any of those things with his phone on. I don't think we're going to find that. But the surveilling and documenting and seeing the ins and outs of the house, definitely, I think he's done that. But did he go up to the back door and see if it was open with his phone on? I highly doubt it.
Not with his phone on, but do you think he's ever been in the house or gotten really close, even with his phone off? I do.
I think he's gone close. I mean, you can get really close to the house just driving up to it. You know, it's very compact in that area. It's not that big. Coca-Cola 337 comes in saying, remember when he reached over with his left hand to grab his license back from the officer? Do you think that's a dominant thing? Do you think that's how you would reach? I mean, the officer's on his right side.
Oh,
you know?
yes, then yes, because yeah, absolutely. So that again would be you're not consciously aware of it. So right now I just went to go use my hand as an Italian. So just giving you an example, I switched my phone from my one hand to the other, not realizing it, just so that I can talk. So if I'm doing that and I'm talking about how we do this without thinking about it, absolutely. That was a good pickup, whoever caught that.
Mm-hmm. Truth exposed. Dolphin locked up his Carfax and BK drove 7 miles while living in Pullman. Only while living in Pullman, he was shopping. All right. Sure.
Remember they said that the best shopping was in Moscow?
Yeah.
Is that maybe what she meant?
That could be. Well, he said in Idaho. He said Idaho has his best shopping. And you know, he's in Clarkson, Washington, doing some shopping that's interesting. That's going to be coming up. Allie Book says, remember that they said he was so close he could have been within 5 feet of the home. I think it was Westcom, whatever that is. I'm not saying if I say that correctly. You know what? Let's see. Let me pull this up real quick.
And that would go with what I was saying about what Kaylee's dad said in the very beginning, that he might have been so close that he touched the Wi-Fi.
So, I mean, if you're parked right here and the house was literally like right there, so it's about 3 meters that you could park and get right up to the house. It's super close from I know it was a 3-story house, but it was a small compact house as well. Very, very compact area. And the other thing too, so some folks are saying that the DoorDash delivery may have been in the backyard. I don't know if that's accurate. You know, remember that they had the bag right there, right next to the sliding glass door was a Jack in the Box bag up against the sink. And we found out that it was a $3.59 when she picked up the order. I'm wondering if that's the time that she clicked on her phone that she received it, and that it's pinpointing towards the back of the home because that's where the bag was. So I wonder if she grabbed it, went upstairs, took the food out, and at the same time with her phone, accepting it, which is why it's showing up somewhat in the middle of the house towards the kitchen area. And that happens at 3:59, so well before Bryan Kohberger pulls in at 4:04 and parks at 4:07. The documents indicate that there was a 13 minutes there time frame from the time that the vehicle lights turn off, the headlights that they can see from 1122 or 1112 King Road, to the time when he's peeling out. It's at 4:20 and 40 some odd cents or change there for where he's peeling out in front of the house there, 1122 or 1112. 13 minutes. I think that's a lot. That's well enough time. Do you?
1,000%. He does a 6-minute mile.
That's true. That is true. That is true. I think it's absolutely possible, plausible. I think he parked right there, just went in. There's a phone call from, I think it's Bethany to Dylan at 4:19. And at 4:19, Bethany or Dylan is telling Bethany that she saw somebody wearing, what she saw. So this happened prior to that. We know at 4:17 is when the thud can be heard. And so my assumption is that around 4:18 is when the intruder is walking out and is passing by in front of Dylan. 4:19 is when the phone call comes in. So at 4:18, from 4:18 to 4:20 and 43 seconds, that's almost 3 minutes afterwards. I think that's plenty of time for somebody to get undressed and dressed into something else outside and then leave. That way that they don't track as much DNA in the car. What do you think?
I agree 100%. I do. And I think that, like you said, there was a phone call, because if you just look at the text messages, out of nowhere, Bethany just says about hell. But Xana was wearing all black tonight. So I think that was her way of trying to talk Dylan out of being so afraid. Because again, you guys, you have to remember, I would not be thinking that that's what was happening, right? Like, and especially because they said that they were used to playing pranks on each other and stuff. So they were obviously scared enough that she runs down and spends the night with Bethany. But I genuinely think that the last thing they were thinking is that somebody just killed their friends. Do you agree? Right?
I think that there was the thought maybe this wasn't real, maybe perhaps this is a prank. Remember that we talked about the clothing and stuff that happened right next door. That sounds like a prank. Somebody broke. That was next door.
I didn't know it was that close when I said that. I thought it was just in the neighborhood.
No, that was next. That was right next door. The persons that had that's why they got the video camera that ended up capturing Bryan Kohberger pulling in.
Oh, I thought you meant the one where the cops came because of the girl with the luggage.
Yeah, that was next door.
Oh, that was right next door. Wow.
Mm-hmm. That's why they bought the camera for the light. Because of that incident.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that incident ended up playing a huge role because that started the domino effect of them getting the camera, and that camera ended up capturing what happened months later or a year later.
Could you imagine if that's what does him in?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, I mean, I don't think it's him. I don't think it was him that did the luggage thing. I think that was a prank. I really do think that was a prank. It was mostly underwear that was out there and stuff like that. So I think that was a prank from the area. Somebody opened the door and like, hey, look, we got this. So they threw it all out. It actually happened in my neighborhood not too long ago. I woke up, the cops had knocked on my door, and sure enough, there was like clothes down the street. And then the cop was like knocking on doors, like, is this your clothes? And I walked out there, I was like, no. And I was like, look, there's a folder. And I opened a folder and I found a name, I found an address. I'm like, here's where you need to go, dude.
Oh, wow.
So he ended up getting all that stuff and finding it out. But I think it ended up being a prank. But yeah, this officer was just knocking on the doors. I'm like, just look at the stuff on the ground, my man. It's not going to take you a little bit to figure out where this stuff came from. I solved the case for him in a matter of 4 minutes. It was funny. Crazy. But yeah, I think at the end of it, it was a prank. But if the prank ended up, causing that domino effect that would end up getting him caught. Papa Rogers, this is from Deb, said he has a sexual dysfunction. Could this have committed these murders to get off? What do you think about that? I think very much this was sexually oriented. What do you think?
1,000%, I think it was sexually oriented, and I think that using a knife is what we know that that a knife could be used, and I know this might sound crazy to some people, but as like a metaphor of like a male appendage. So I absolutely think that this was like sexually motivated, 1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
I do, which is why I think that he pleasured himself right after, like you do.
Yeah, no, I think multiple times. I think that picture there is an eerie after effect, to think about. But I think that's exactly what he did. I mean, he's out of the shower. He looks like he just took a shower. It's probably his second one of the day, if not third. Still has a lot of red in his hair. It's after so many showers. Sam says, I highly recommend the film Lost Highway, which details the psychogenetic food and being in complete denial of murdering someone, which I feel Kohberger is trying to do. Do you think there's any part of Kohberger in denial of what he committed?
No, not at all. So what this person, I think this movie sounds interesting, and I'm going to write it down so I can watch it. But what they're talking about is dissociative fugue, is what it's called. And fugue is when you just up and leave, and it's like your brain is in so much emotional distress that it kind of like just shuts off. So think of like a machine that's overheating and it just like shuts off for a minute. Think of that as like fugue. So the person forgets everything. They don't forget how to tie their shoes. So it's different than amnesia in that sense, but they forget everything that around the crime or whatever the case may be, or their victimization, it could be. But I don't think that had anything to do with Kohberger. I think it's something completely different. I think that it was methodical, well thought out. I think he planned it. I think he went through all the motions multiple times to make sure he got it right. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that there's only one tiny piece of evidence that, especially since they all said it was like a bloodbath and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Dorian brings up an interesting question. Dorian says, do you think they stopped the physical contact because they're going to say he doesn't like contact, or how could he commit such an intimate crime? They did say that he has the OCD and the germophobia, and they were fixing his collar and doing all these things. He seemed perfectly fine when all that was happening. That's a great point there.
And I have that written down, you guys. That was one of my problems with the OCD thing the last time we talked, because and again, remember we explained how not everybody with OCD is not everybody, yes, with OCD is the germaphobe type, but they do say that he is. But my thing is, to be the germaphobe type, there's just so much gore that goes along with this crime that I don't see how it matches.
Some folks are saying that in the time that he was there, which was about what? So June, the end of June. So basically July, August, September, October, November, December. So in about a 5-month span, he drove about 7,000 miles.
That's possible.
That's that's not too much. I mean, a lot of people are saying that in Pullman, being how small it is, is that likely? I mean, he's a TA. He works very close to where he lives. Even if he's going to Moscow, which is only 10 miles away, how many trips is he going back and forth to put up that amount of mileage? So, and
he's the type to just drive around and wander. Like, you could put on miles real quick. I know I put about almost 20,000 miles on my car a year. I drive a lot. I work a lot though. So I don't think it's impossible to put 7,000 miles on in 5 months, but I think there was probably a lot of driving around that he did.
I do too. Mm-hmm. So from the time that he left his parents to the time he got arrested, he put on 10,200 some odd miles on his car. We deducted the 2,000 from driving to his parents' house to Pullman and come up with roughly 7,000.
Wow, that is a lot.
What kind of personality disorder does he fit, such as Jodi Arias had borderline PD?
Oh, that's such a great question. So in my personal opinion, I thought you would never ask. I'm just kidding. So I think that in my personal opinion, I think that we see comorbidity, which is just the occurrence of more than one disorder at one time. It is my personal academic opinion that he suffers from narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, which are both in the same cluster in personality disorder. So it's not uncommon to see both together. And then I think he also, in addition, has schizoid and obsessive compulsive personality traits. So I don't know that he has enough of either one of them to to fit a complete diagnosis, but I definitely see traits. So for example, for schizoid, that would be like emotional coldness, lack of close relationships. And then for obsessive compulsive personality disorder, so this is different than OCD, this would be rigid thinking, meticulous control over your environment. So I think that fits more of Kohberger more so than a germaphobe.
Mm. So there was a situation, I guess, that happened early on in high school with Bryan Kohberger. He was in the law enforcement program. He was then forced to take the HVAC class. The professor or the teacher, the administrator for the school district that was being interviewed, that was speaking about this, mentioned that it was an all-male class. We find out later that he ends up getting that he ended up finishing his junior year online, and then his senior year was also taken online. So whatever it is that he alleged done was serious enough for that to have occurred. Now, I've heard rumors, I can't say if they're true or not, but I heard a rumor that what it was that he had downloaded some sort of app on some young lady's phone, and that this app had given him their location, kind of like a Snapchat thing, but without their knowledge. If he's doing things like that in high school, do you see that as an early indication of what's to come?
1,000%. So in order to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, or psychopathy is what people call it, you have to have conduct disorder before the age of 15. So that would completely fit conduct disorder before the age of 15. I did not know that. But isn't that also kind of like what he supposedly or allegedly did with a female peer? Didn't she say that? I have a feeling we're going to find out that he was the one that was like, that went through her stuff just so that he could be like the person that saves her after.
Right. Yeah. So the other one was that he had allegedly, this was the report that it came out through, I think it was either ABC, NBC, Dateline, one of these guys, that, and remember they're so I had been watching this documentary on the topic. I think it was Dateline or NBC, and they were talking to sources. Now, their sources were fellow PhD students. They just didn't say who they were, but they said that they were fellow PhD students. And during some of these articles or whatever, they mentioned that there was an incident where allegedly one of Bryan Kohberger's classmates, students, whatever, he may have been close to one at one time, and they believe he may have broken into her house, moved some things around, and then, recommended to her that she install cameras and that he do the installation. And he did it. He's like, hey, you should install these cameras. I know these cameras over here are pretty good. I can put them in for you if you buy them. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like, oh, let me do it, blah, 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 but a manipulative way of doing it. Like, hey, you should be concerned. You're young. You're in an area, probably the first time away from your family. Look at what happened. To protect yourself while you're not at home, it's probably in your best interest if you put up these cameras. I've worked in this field before. I've installed these cameras before. I can put them in for you real easy. All I got to do is buy them. And, I got somebody that's going to help me. Come to find out, he ended up having access to these cameras, allegedly, and was watching.
And think about it, you guys, how manipulative and calculated is that? And they're trying to say that he has that he lacks social awareness and stuff like you would with autism and things like that. But he would have had to known what he was doing in that situation. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, so if he's able to say to the girl, like, look, like, like all the things that you just said, he clearly can be socially aware when he wants to.
I mean, he'd have to do something to get as far as he did. I mean, he was in the PhD program. You don't, I feel like you have to have some sort of mask to get there. If you're struggling with all these issues, I mean, you also have to, we have to understand who he's surrounding himself around. Catherine Ramsland, Dr. John Snyder, or Professor John Snyder, who was at WSU, who was an attorney who dealt with criminals that were charged and accused of murder and things of that nature. So he's putting himself around police officers and law enforcement agency hopefuls, law enforcement officer hopefuls for the future that are looking for people like him, and is able to mask that for quite a while.
I agree with you 100%. I actually went through and I found through all the documents since he's been arrested, people that have come out that have known him. So friends, students, classmates, neighbors, things like that. And there's like some really interesting things, like things from, you were just saying about Dr. Catherine Ramsland. So somebody, Brittany Slavin, took several classes with him at DeSales, and she recalls that in one of Dr. Ramsland's classes, the students were asked to look at a crime scene photos and figure out what happened. And BK was quick to come up with ideas. He seemed to show a particular interest in crime scenes and serial killers. So like, these are just people that knew him. So, and I found like a lot of that. So the chances of one person coming out and maybe telling a fake story about you, sure. Two people, sure. But I have a whole list here. Like if I showed you, I have 11 pages worth of quotes of what people have said about him. And there's so many themes that there's no way it's a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, it
yes.
makes sense.
I'll have to send this to you so you could look at it on your own, so you could see if you make any connections that I didn't make. Because I'm telling you, you really are a good like resident psychologist.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, do you think he has his attorneys convinced?
Do I think he
has his attorneys? Do you think that he's been able to convince them regardless?
No, but I think that he probably thinks that he did. But again, that's the thing, is that somebody smart like his lawyers can see through him. And I think that that's part of the problem with his disorders, is that he thinks that he's getting over on people, or he thinks that he has a better idea than you. Like, you're not smart enough. I'm not smart enough. Neither are these people. You know, in his head, not for real. Even the judge, I'm sure he thinks he's smarter than the judge. And he has all this time now. I'm wondering how much of this he's like reading, you know, the law books and stuff. And who knows? I would love to be a fly on the wall, to be in one of the meetings with him and his lawyer, just to see, like, because didn't they say that he was like combative and stuff, and that's why they're trying to warn people that he might not, you know, look this way or that way in court? Like, that to me almost seems like, what happened that you had to bring that up?
That's exactly what I had said last time. I was like, they're so concerned about his behavior and about what, you know, the jury is going to see. I wonder if something happened. Did something happen, you know, during their questioning? You know, did something happen when they were saying, all right, these people are going to bring up these facts, and you know, every time that those facts are brought up, is there something that he can't control that is just showing up? Sirius comes in saying with $5 super chat, it's great to have you back tonight, Dr. V. Thank you both for a very informative live. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I do think that, so I think he thought that he can convince everybody, but I think there's a point where he, you know, maybe not, maybe, you know, I'm not psychotic or psychosis or whatever the psychopath. So I would have come to the realization, all right, they got me, you know, they got the DNA, they got the car, they got everything. Let's try to work out a plea deal. But the more that they keep throwing out there, the more I think that's not going to happen.
Think about Casey Anthony. Do you remember she like took the cops all the way to the door of where she supposedly worked at, still at Universal, and it wasn't until she couldn't physically go any further that she said, okay, I don't work here anymore. Like, so they're like, she's still walking down that hallway. I don't know, did she think they were going to be like, all right, we believe you? Like, I don't know. Like, so there obviously is something to say about thinking that people are going to believe you. So it's like, if I say it, you know, with enough conviction, like that, they're going to believe me. And I don't believe him, in my opinion.
His sisters are in your field.
Yes.
Do you think they know?
Yes, I do. Especially the one that's a marriage and family therapist. That's what my specialization's in. And you literally, for your marriage and family therapy specialization, after you're done getting your master's, you could get a 12 credit specialization. And the marriage and family therapy one is it's all about families. You have to do your whole, like your dissertation or your capstone, whatever you want to call it at the end. You break down your own family. I would pay to read her master's thesis because it would be about her own family. I did one about my own family, and one of the common themes I found was secrets. So I wonder, like, what were the common themes that she found in her family? Because that's what she would have had to done. So yes, I absolutely do. But I think she's also the one that doesn't live with them. So in my opinion, it would have been the other sister that really would have had insight into, like, this is weird, or like he's acting different than he did before. I know everybody talks about him with the gloves and stuff, but as far as I'm aware, he didn't wear gloves before the crime. So I think that was one of the red flags that the sister saw that made her, like, concerned. And at some point she goes in his car and tries to find stuff. So like, where was he? Was he like asleep during that time? Like, she could have put herself in a lot of danger if he would have felt threatened that she might have given him up.
Yeah, I'm going to do my psychic thing. This is where I predict the future. I'm predicting that Catherine Ramsland is assisting her in writing a book.
Catherine Ramsland has written 72 books. I don't even know how that's possible. So I would not be surprised if you are correct about that.
Well, I don't know if she can write one on Bryan Kohberger because that was her student.
No, you can. I can, especially after 2 years. So if the reason that she can't do anything now, I think, is because of the gag order.
So you don't think that there's something that maybe perhaps within the school that is preventing her from writing about her own student? Like maybe
No,
the
not-
Stells wouldn't like that. Like, hey, we don't want one of our teachers writing a book on one of our students. That may prevent other students from coming here thinking they may have a book written about them.
Believe it or not, I think if anything, it might attract attention. And you know what they say, good attention or bad attention, it's attention. So it brings people there. So they have that whole murder house. So I think just having that alone attracts people. So I think if anything, it would make people more curious and want to be in her class and, to see if they're going to find out. I think if anything, it would bring people to the school, not take them away. But as far as legally, there's nothing legal. However, she couldn't write it with Kohberger. Like, she wrote the one with Dennis Rader, but I don't believe he was allowed to profit off of it. So he was allowed to so if anything, wouldn't that be more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, wouldn't that be more of an ethical thing with BTK than even with Kohberger, because BTK really helped assist in writing the book. So I don't think that there's anything as far as DeSales. If anything, I think DeSales should be more upset about the Reddit survey that's up there. Like, I just don't know that Reddit was, I don't know. I'm dying to know if they even know that that survey was out there. I know people are saying that it was his final project, the one with the questionnaire that I keep saying, if you do get to interview him, please ask him the questions that he has on that questionnaire. So I have heard that that was like a group project or whatever, but does DeSales know that it was, put out on Reddit? I'm just thinking, as somebody, with an IRB, I had to go through the whole IRB process. There's no way, Daniel, they are so specific. Like, you have to go back and tell them exactly where you're doing things. It has to be very, very, you have to be able to measure it. Like, there's just so much that goes into it that just blows my mind. So I wonder, I'm dying to know, does DeSales even know that that questionnaire was on Reddit? And he put it up there 1 month before he graduated, which says to me that he put it up there for his own his self, because it takes longer than a month for data collection. So, and then after data collection, you have to, analyze the data, then you have to put it together and you have to share it with people. Like, there's just so much that goes on. So to think that you could put it up and graduate a month later and be able to write something from it, like, I just feel like we're going to find out that he didn't write anything about it, that it had nothing to do with his graduation requirements. Or at least I don't see how it can. I could be wrong about this, but I just don't see how it can. 1 month before you graduate is not enough time.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, I wonder how much attention did he go into it with? Well, I mean, if the project was coming to an end, then if it was a group project, you put it 1 month out before he graduates, because now nobody else, why would the rest of his group care to look into it if the project is over?
That's what I'm thinking. So that's what I mean. So I think I think if anything, the university would be upset about that more so than Catherine Ramsland possibly writing a book. So, and I think you're right. So even if he was part of a group, that's a good point, that they could have been done And then he now puts it out. And you guys have to remember, he would have still had his DeSales University's email address. So that could have been a way that he, like when you sign up for something, they want to check. So they're like, check your email. So they could have done that on Reddit. Like Reddit could have done their due diligence and seen that he really was a student. Okay, maybe he really is. But my thing is, like, who's filling that out? Like, unless you've been caught and you've done your time, would you ever fill out that survey? Like,
right.
What I mean?
The only persons that are filling that out are persons who have accepted that they're guilty of that crime.
That's right. So they would have already had to done their time. Like I'm assuming that a criminal that did a crime like this is not just going to write. And again, that would be stupid to think that they couldn't trace your computer back to you.
Well, right when supposedly when he turned on his phone, he accessed the VPN and went onto some sort of secret email address that he had, something Army Wi-Fi, which I think is the same one that he may have had when he was dealing with that app that I mentioned earlier and following somebody. May have been something to do with that as well. Deb says that the defense mentions this, and she says no friends in PA ever mentioned this, but the defense mentions that very early in his education, he was treated as a child with special needs, evaluated psychological, and provided instructional support, including, I think the document said that he was given extra time to complete work.
So was I.
Yeah. My daughter.
I have ADHD, you know what I mean? I'd never had to use it, but I'm technically, if I needed an extra day to hand something in, I could have gotten it, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm still a doctor now. So I think that's some of the problems that I'm having is that the defense is saying all these things, even if they're true. So let's just say what the defense is saying is true and he is autistic or he does have OCD or none of that negates what he did. There's plenty of people with autism and OCD that just so people know, with any mental illness, you're more likely to be the victim of a crime than you are to be a perpetrator. The only group of disorders that we see more the opposite is with personality disorders, which is again why I don't think I think that's the only thing I could think of is why does the defense specifically say that they don't want things like, psychopathy and stuff coming into effect? And the only thing I could think of is that if they have somebody that sits down to give their opinion about his disorders, again, the prosecution comes up and has to cross, and how you can't cross if you can't say about personality disorders. So I wonder what the judge is going to say about that. I hope to God that did he rule in that yet? Like, are they allowed to say sociopath?
Not yet. I think that's what one of the hearings on April 9th is going to be about.
I hope he allows it.
I hope so too. I hope they allow an independent doctor to evaluate him. I mean, I don't understand what the big deal is there.
There's a huge deal because if there's a huge deal that says to me that they know that he's not autistic and has OCD, because if you get an independent person that, let's say, is getting paid not from the prosecution or the defense, so they have no skin in the game, if they did a real psychological evaluation on him, the chances of them coming up with any disorder that would stop him from the DP is slim to none. So it wouldn't make sense for the defense to want that, right? And then again, what if they then come back with, nah, he's just, a sociopath? Then what?
Well, that's what I was saying. I was like, it shouldn't be a big deal if you are what you say you are. And the problem is that you're absolutely right, because if they got an independent person to go in there and say, hey, you know what, he does have these things, then I think that would be more of a reason to throw out the death penalty. I mean, I think that's probably your best shot of throwing it out is by going that route versus, just not doing it. I mean, to me, I think that would have helped better. C-Joy asks about Bryan Kohberger taking a year of psychology in Northampton Community College. I can say that here in Texas, psychology is a prerequisite in the criminal justice class. So you do have to take it. I had to take, I think I lie about how much it was. I say it was half a semester. I think I took 3 semesters of psychology, maybe 4. So
I knew it. I knew you took something in psychology. You had to.
Well, I took them. My goal at the time was to be, I wanted to go very high in the police department. And so I was planning on going to the FBI Academy and getting my degree. in criminal justice. And my goal was to eventually, be a chief of police somewhere. But, injuries and other opportunities came up that allowed me to really advance my career outside of practicing being a police officer or law or legalness. That really helped me. And so financially, especially. So I don't regret it. Hadn't I got hurt, I think I probably would have gone in that route. But yeah.
But can I ask a personal question? When all of that happened, now you said that you had like other opportunities, so maybe it didn't, but did you feel like part of your identity was like stripped of you almost? Like, even though you were the one that made the choice at the end of the day, like, do you feel like part of that? Because I still see you as a cop, right? But did you
Right.
feel like that?
Oh, 100%. I went to my kids and I told them, I used to be proud to say, hey, it's daddy. I'm a police officer, blah, blah, blah. And then I had to go into them and say, hey, I'm a salesperson. It didn't have the same ring. You know what I mean? But the things I was able to do with them because of my business opportunities that I had after the fact, I think that they've been able to enjoy, because I would not have been there as much. I was working 12-hour days, working at nights, during the day. I mean, I might be there, but I'm not physically there. You know what I mean? Those type of things. And so
Right.
it's a lot of stress. To me, not so much. I mean, I enjoyed the work. I was called a crap magnet, which is a censored version because I attracted all the crap. Is what they said. I found everything, but I had a lot of arrests of people that were burglarizing in the moment, things like that. And what I would tell my peers was, well, the reason why I'm successful at what I was doing wasn't because I'm just lucky. It's because I'm in the neighborhoods. I'm actually where the crime is happening. I'm not driving down the main streets of the city, just cruising, listening to music. There's a difference. When you get out there and you work and you have a high work ethic, you end up finding things. And it allowed me to promote fairly quickly, but then, the crap caught up to me and ended up herniating a couple of discs in my back, pinching a nerve, throwing out a bunch of pain, breaking a couple of ribs. The injury that ended up being the last injury that I had was one that I'm still dealing with to this day with my back. So yeah, it is what it is. But even now today, when I hear the sirens and the cars and I see them, I still
Wow.
wish, but it is what it is.
That's so interesting that you say that, though, because when we have like our most our memories that we usually, when somebody's telling you a story, if they're not including things like when I hear sirens, like, so things that have to do with your senses, I believe it less. So not that I'm talking about you, I just mean in general. So the fact that you brought sensory stuff into it means that you really, when you hear a siren, that still to this day gets you. So I would say that you have, because you have such a strong identity, that this didn't break you. But imagine Bryan Kohberger wanted to be in the ROTC and the this and the that. And it was like almost as if he was never good enough. Like he just never was able to seal the deal with those things. And academically, he was able to do so. But I think he wanted to like be a cop and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, like, if that could strip a part of an identity of a man that has a very secure sense of himself. Imagine if you didn't have a sense of yourself and then lost some of those things. You could almost see how it makes somebody feel like they have no identity.
Well, initially, so I'll go a little bit into detail about what happened. So I had a buddy of mine who sold cars, and he made a very well living selling cars. The guy was making about $15,000 to $20,000 a month just selling cars. And I was like, man, I'm out here putting my life on the line and you're making what I make a year and 2 months. That's bull crap. And, I got into it and I couldn't do it at first. I struggled. I remember one of the first times that I was trying to sell a car, the guy came in and he asked for, I worked at a Toyota dealership, and he asked for a van. And I told him I had some vans in the back, and he said, you know what, I'll be back. And then he came back and he purchased from somebody else. And my manager asked him, like, hey, why'd you purchase from that other guy and not from Daniel? And the response was, well, that guy's demeanor is real mean. Like he acts like a cop. And I started laughing because I was like, well, that's what I did for the last 7-8 years. And, I had to really change myself. And there was a point in my time where I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. I had already left the department. And so it's not like I could go back. I felt like I screwed myself in that situation because had I stayed, I would have had an administrative job and not, whatever, but I left, and now coming back with an injury, it was more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I was a liability to them. And so, I really thought I screwed the pooch. I wasn't getting any, jobs or motions anywhere else. I really had to focus in and train myself. And then I started doing well in sales, and I got to the point where I was with my buddy, and then I moved out, and I moved from that town, and I moved to San Antonio, and got an opportunity to work in construction sales, and then also work in solar sales, and I project managed for roofing, solar, and construction all together. And then that allowed me to make my own business and then go forward from there. But I had to overcome a lot. Like, I had to overcome so much. Fear was one of the things I had to overcome. I'm terribly scared of heights. And so one of the first jobs I got as a project manager was as a roofer. And I had to get on roofs to assess damage after a hailstorm. And the first roof I had to get on was a 3-story house. And I was like, oh God. And I had a back injury, and so I was shaking. I had to deal with that, the whole 9 yards. And the guy that hired me was like, hey, you either can make about $20,000 to $25,000 a month here jumping on this roof, or you can get back down and go work somewhere for $15 an hour flipping burgers or something. So I got off the roof. I mean, I got off the ladder and got on the roof. I had to do what I had to do, but it was fear, and then
What hold you back, or not you personally, like in general, fears, what holds people back?
Oh, I'm deadly terrified of heights. I have no idea to this day how I did it. I have a picture of me on a roof where I took a screenshot, or a selfie, I'm sorry, and you could just see the terror. I think I probably look like Bryan Kohberger in that image, just dead faced, straight.
But isn't it funny though how you're afraid of heights, but like you put yourself in danger as a cop?
Well, when I was in the Army, so I was coming out of the Army, and my father,
you were in the Army too?
I was in the Army. And so when I was coming out of the Army, my father had basically, he was friends with somebody very high in the city. And they basically had offered me, saying, obviously I had to pass the physical, the agility run, the psychological and everything. But as long as I passed everything, that I'd had an opportunity to work either for the fire department or the police department in local. And I said, all right, my initial thought was fire department. I didn't like cops. Growing up, I was into street racing. Sorry, Mom, if you're hearing this, I may have done some things when I was a child with a car that there's a reason why the head gasket may have blown. Well, anyways.
That's like a $10,000 job there.
Oh yeah, it was. And I didn't like cops. I wasn't a fan of it. And so I was actually going to be a firefighter, and I started looking into what it would have taken to be one. And in the city that I was going to go and apply for, they would send out their firefighter cadets to Dallas, Fort Worth, and they would conduct a lot of their training there. And the training in Dallas, had at the time, you would have had to have climbed, I think it was like 8 stories head first down a ladder. And I was like, screw that. I'd rather run into gunfire than have to deal with that. I was like, I ain't doing that. Nope, never. And that's the story of how I became a police officer. I made my decision right then and there. I was like, yep, I'm gonna choose to back the blue. And I loved it every moment. The academy, the whole 9 yards. I didn't think I was, but I did. It really, a lot of people say it's a calling and this, that, and a third. And initially it was not for me, I'll be honest. But it was a lot to leave. It was a lot to leave.
I bet. Well, first, let me just say thank you for being brave so that I could be free. I'm the last person you would want next to you in the army because I'd get us all killed. I'd be like, and they'd be like, oh, they're right there. So thank you for being brave so that I could be free. That's number one. And that's for anybody that's watching right now. And number two, I would say if you're watching right now, it's good to hear Daniel talk about this. And thank you for being vulnerable because I think that there's so many layers to each one of us as humans, right? So I think sometimes when people see like a content creator and you're like, oh, they're this, that, or the other, you just have a thought in your head. And there's just so many layers and so many things that a lot of people probably just found out about you that they never knew before. And the silver lining is that you wouldn't be the Drunk Turkey Show if your cards went any different. So I would say to somebody right now that is just at the stage where you got hurt and had to make the decision to leave, and then at some point you felt like maybe you screwed yourself, if that's where you're at right now, hang on, because tomorrow is a new day, and in 5 or 10 years you could be doing whatever you're passionate about. Like I would say that you're helping more people, you're helping thousands of people a night as opposed to a few people in the streets a day. So if anything, you're not only using your cops abilities, but you're using it in a way that's helping others. So good for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, this channel was not supposed to be true crime or anything like that. It's just
aliens. I know. I used to watch. I mean, not that I used to. I used to watch when it was aliens. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah. It was. It's what I talk about. It's what I know. It's what I do. You know what I'm saying? And so, it kind of, for me at least, it's a connection back in. I've looked into doing the whole private eye stuff, because I thought to myself, maybe I could do that. Somebody wants to know something. I thought about it. Let me know what you guys think. Would you guys hire a guy like me to go and find out some information? I think I'd be pretty good about it. I think I'd be good at it. Right. I will. I definitely will. But we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. I want to thank you for those that haven't seen your channel. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
So my channel is The Minds Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona. I am not monetized. So all I ask is that people come over and subscribe so that I just want to reach more people. I feel like if I can, help one person, that I've done something good. So hopefully, by somebody just subscribing to my channel, it could reach maybe somebody that really needs me in their life at that time. So again, it's The Minds Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona. And if you could just go subscribe and maybe that would be amazing. And I hope to see you again over here. I hope I get to come back here again too, because I really love this community.
Yes, 100%. And I think that we should do one on your channel where it's just myself, and not a dual stream. That way we can get some of. I want to drive some support to your channel. I think you're doing an excellent job reporting on this case and doing a great job giving your insight. And so maybe we'll work on something where I'm on your channel. So if you guys want to catch that, the next one, you got to make sure you go and subscribe over here. And that's at The Minds Behind True Crime with Dr. Vona. I have it linked. I think it's in the title of the video. So if you just click there, if you're on the YouTube side, if not, just kind of search this on YouTube. She's getting close. She has 319 to go. That's pretty close. We can do that. We can do that, guys.
You guys are awesome. And it's funny because when you just said about going to my channel, fear just came across my whole body. So just know that even as a doctor, right, you still get fear. So when you just said that, my whole body was like, no, because my fear would be that we would do a live stream and that 10 people would show up. And I know that that's probably not right. But again, there are the things that stop you from doing things in life. So you just have to take those risks, because the only thing in life that you'll regret are the risks that you didn't take.
Exactly. And one other thing I do need to clear up, because so the last time I was on live, not the last time, but the time before, there was a gentleman in the live chat that said something to the effect that it's time that we should talk face to face. I took that as him telling me, hey, let's talk outside. And so I was like, you tell a man, hey, let's go talk outside, or let's talk face to face. That usually means something, right? Well, that wasn't the case. This man has reached out to me saying that he wants to debate me on live channel. I have not yet decided whether or not I'm going to do that or not. He strongly believes that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. I told him I would have fixed the narrative, that I wouldn't leave it out there that he threatened me, and that wasn't the case. He reached out to me and told me he was not threatening me. And so I do want to clear that up. I don't want anybody to think that that wasn't the case. You know what I mean? Leave anything false. But, he has challenged me to a debate. I'm thinking about it. It's not that I think that, I'm worried about it or this, that, or a third. It's just we're so close to the trial, and I do know certain things that I don't want to slip that maybe in the heat of a debate could come out. I've come close to do that.
Can I give you my opinion? I don't think
Go
it's
ahead.
the best idea. Let me tell you why. I feel like sometimes if I challenge you to a debate, that's like very, intriguing to do. But does this person really have the right intentions? Like, are you now going to expose his audience to you? And then, like, I don't know, like, are they, like, could you be bringing them more attention that maybe they shouldn't be having I don't know. I would just
Right.
be careful with that, because I feel like you're doing the right thing and you're on the right side of history. And like you said, I would hate for you to just debate somebody and then say something that maybe you shouldn't have or whatever. I don't know. You do what you want, obviously, and I'll be in the chat fighting for you. But I'm just saying, I would be afraid that I don't know who the person is. So I would just look into it and just make sure that they're not doing it because they want you to bring them clout.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Jeff, real quick, asks, in a nutshell, what are the timing advance reports? Haven't looked into that yet. I looked into the timing advance reports and stuff. They're just saying that, they didn't look at all this stuff, and Balance in the report said that Balance basically stated that you don't necessarily have to look at everything to figure this out. You don't have to look at all those things to get this. This is sufficient. These records, and these are accurate. That's basically all it was. But at the end of the day, the argument is a partial corroboration of his alibi, which is no alibi.
No alibi.
But thank you, everybody. Please go like, subscribe, hit that notification button. Remember, when you like, that tells the YouTube channel, even if you ring the notification bell, that tells YouTube, I want to watch more of this content, and they'll end up notifying you. I've seen folks who have the notification button ring and don't get notified. Well, they didn't like the channel, or they didn't like the content. So if you hit the like button, YouTube will tell you, all right, well, then definitely get this out there. Thank you again, Doctor. It was a great night. I'll be doing a members only live this weekend, so member up. We'll be doing that either tomorrow or Sunday, but it's probably going to be Sunday by midday or so. So with that being said, guys, I'll talk to y'all later.